love it. Let's get this party started.
That's right.
All right. Woo! Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of The Ruthless Truth with Ruth. I am here with the man, the myth, the legend. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Alejandro Avendano. Did I say it so right? No.
Yeah,
No. I butchered it.
yeah.
I
No,
butchered
Avendaño is the wrong letter, but that's okay. Avendaño.
it.
Avendano is
Neo.
good. Avendano. I've taken Avendano on for 25 years now, so I'm good.
Do we want to get it right? All right. Well, I'm just going to go with the man, the myth, the legend until I can figure this out. And that's how we're going to roll.
Triple A works.
Triple A is in the house. And I'm so glad that you are here. I'm excited to dive into multiple questions that I have for you about life, about fatherhood, about this journey that you're on, the book you wrote, and a lot of different things. So we're just going to get into it. We're going to get a little loose. And we're going to start with, I want people to know about you and sort of how you grew up, where you grew up. So if you don't mind just diving into a little bit of your history, like where you're from and all that goodness. Yeah.
All right, cool. So, well, I was born in Florida, in Fort Pierce, which is a little town on the east coast of Florida between Miami and Orlando. It's like literally like in the middle of the two. It's like a 4-hour drive if you're doing the speed limit. Like it's like 2 hours of each city, pretty much. So I was planned to be born there while my parents were in college, and so after they graduated from college, they were on a scholarship, and they finished the scholarship, and then they went back home, to just kind of like return to their home. So I moved obviously with them, and I grew up in Caracas, Venezuela, which is Caracas is the capital of Venezuela, and yeah, so I mean, I lived there for 18 years of my life. A pretty traditional Venezuelan upbringing. My grandpa on my mom's side was a baseball and boxing TV and radio announcer. So like kind of a big deal. Uh, but I never like really got a sense of like this like crazy fame or whatever. But it was pretty cool to be exposed to like being at the ballpark at a young age. With him in the dugout with this like our baseball teams and stuff as I was doing work and just like sit in the in the room where he was doing all this like all this stuff. So I think a lot of my subconscious desire to to go for more than just the status quo comes from him, and just seeing like all the stuff and the level of success that he achieved. But yeah, so like I went to school there in Venezuela. I don't know if it's the same in where you're from, but and I need to interview you about where you're from too at some point, because I know you said it before, but I just like confuse all of the stuff, just like my name. It's like you go in first grade basically or whatever, like pre-K, and like you do not change buildings all the way out till you graduate from high school. So like you're literally in the same like the same building hosts, elementary, middle, and high school all together. So like the way that people grow up and the relationships that people build, it's a lot stronger because the classes aren't like massive like here, right? For one, and then secondly, they don't do the whole whirlpool of like thousands of students being mixed up. Like literally, like if you're with like you start out with like 40 kids, you'll end up with like 75% of the time that the people in that same class graduating with you. And so like even if you're the nerd, right, or like of the class, like, and you get picked on at the beginning, right, like you end up growing into the whole group because it's like it just kind of like how it goes, right? And so like I never faced like a lot of the bullying stuff or whatnot, right? It's all about jokes and stuff. So like the culture is a little bit different in that education, but pretty normal. I went to school, and then when I graduated out of high school, I kind of like got the opportunity to come to the States and learn English for 1 year, and I took it, and after like the year was up, and during that year I learned about like financial aid and all the opportunities that I had here in the States as a citizen. So I just kind of like I always knock on doors. So I started knocking on doors, and the opportunity presented itself to get like full financial aid to go to UCF in Orlando. And I went back that first summer, after being away from my house at 18 for a whole year. And I told my parents like, hey, I got this opportunity to go to college here or come back home and do what I was supposed to. And so my dad actually encouraged me to like, take the opportunity. He kind of like say, hey, if I was in your shoes, I would just take the opportunity because I did it. I mean, he did it himself, with a scholarship and all. So after I kind of like finalized that decision. I came here. I had like the back door open. They said like if it doesn't work out for you or whatever, like we'll extend your university, acceptance here for another year because you could hold it for 2 years. And so I did that, and like after I started, it was just like one of those things, right? Like what happens with growth when you realize you got it down, you kind of like you just like, nah, there's no way that I'm going back to that. I'm sticking it up. Let's go. So I went through college in Florida. I graduated, and then after that, I just got my first job. Well, actually, I graduated as an engineer, but I still worked as a lifeguard 6 months after that. With it. So anytime that people ask me like, what do you do in the water park that I used to work, it's like, oh, I'm an engineer waiting for a job, and they're like, oh, okay, kept walking, right? Like I was like, they never expected it, right, out of me or whatever. And so it was pretty, it's cool. And I got my first job there in Florida. I worked there for like a year and a half, and then I got the opportunity with Boeing, as you know, that and then like that took me up to Seattle. And then from that point on, I just kind of just been living my life, there for 8 years and then here. But growing up, it's like I said, it's pretty normal. I mean, like highlights, I guess. It's just like I said, a lot of the family time is pretty strong. Like my mom's family is pretty tight, and so like I would spend time, a lot of time with them all the time.
How would your like so if I call your parents and I say describe Alejandro in middle school, what's our vibe? I mean, like, are we listening to some rap music at that age, or are we just more of like chilling around? Like, give
No, so
me who we are.
I so through okay, so through okay, so I guess I'll start giving you some facts in the musical because I'm pretty broad. I love music.
Yeah.
Like let's just
Yeah.
start by that, right? Like I can
Okay.
go deep, like any genre. Like you give me a beat of whatever, and I will figure out how to enjoy it. Quite frankly, because even the stuff that I didn't like before, I've learned to appreciate at some point. So I think just like music in general is such a like amazing art, right? That allows you to express stuff. So to answer your question straight up, like I listen to everything really, like pop and then like Latin music, right, and whatnot. But then when I was in high school and my second to like my junior year, I made a hard turn into grunge, and so I just became this like crazy Nirvana freak, right? And I would have sweaters like this, and like I would, I kind of like poke holes on it and just stick my thumb out, because I was a grunge kid in school with long hair, trying to pretend to like. And in Venezuela, like you have to wear like in our schools, you have to wear like a uniform. So it's like I would slick my hair back so it didn't look like it was long, right? But like if I ran around or did anything, like bro was coming out, and so yeah, I mean. I was pretty big into crisscross. I did wear the jeans backwards and the jerseys backwards quite a bit. I listened to Ice-T a lot growing up too. So I mean, it's pretty broad. I mean, I went like I said, I went horizontal on the genres. I really like music. Like I mean, I with my grandma and my grandpa, I used to listen to a lot of like Frank Sinatra and stuff like that in their cars. So I really like that kind of music now too a lot. And as I've grown older, I've expanded. I mean, reggae is a pretty huge part of my life. Being that Venezuela is like right there in the Caribbean, and being going to the beach is a pretty big part of what we do culturally, I guess. Like it's like going to the beach and listen to reggae and just hanging out.
I love it. Um, Question for you. So you mentioned your grandpa and him being a major factor in your life, or giving you essentially, I would say, this drive and this grit that you continually have to go after big
Mm-hmm.
things. What would be like other things that you learned from your grandparents? What other gifts did they give you that you're currently using right now to in order to push to big goals or to just live life or whatever it may be? I just want to figure out what are some lessons that you got from them.
Yeah, I mean, so from my grandpa, right? It's just like that spirit of venturing, right? And just like like he got into, like he did his thing on TV and radio, and that was kind of like his main channel, right? But like he was an entrepreneur. I mean, like he did a lot of, he participated on some sporting goods, like companies, and he actually ended up owning like a minor league baseball team in Venezuela for some period of time, and like, so I think like that's the biggest factor I got from him, right? Like kind of like learning how to be in the spotlight in a way, because I mean, I don't mean to a lot, but like if I let out, it's like everybody's looking at me, right? Um, and so I think like being in the spotlight and just kind of like learning how to handle that crowd presence in a way, even though it may seem awkward here in Zoom today. Um, I think that's one thing that I got from my dad, my grandpa. Like that spirit of like just venturing into projects in general, whether they work or not. Like he just seemed to like just go for things and just kind of like and then I think that a big quality is that giving, um self of like taking care of our friends. I remember growing up, like almost every Sunday after his like noon early games, like narration sessions or whatever broadcast, we will always get together as a family, right? And like we'll just sit like the entire family in a restaurant where we just all eat, and then he would just take care of everything and just kind of like we'll just have like a great Sunday afternoon thing, right? Dinner or whatever. And so it's not necessarily like the fanciness of it or whatever, but just the fact that like he would just like always take care of family. And one thing that I feel like I got pretty heavily on him, because I kind of been told by my family, is I don't like he is the kind of guy, like he wasn't very outspoken about his feelings, right? But like he just did things to make you feel good, right? So like he'll be he I don't know, like you would say some random stuff like oh man, I wish I had this, and next thing you know, like boom, that happened, right? Or like, oh man, I wish I could go to Disney, and then boom, next thing he just arranged a trip to Disney or something like that, right? And so it's not just material stuff, right? They always gave me a sense of comfort. Like I used to like lay on my grandparents, with them on their bed and just kind of hang out watching TV and stuff, growing up. Because my parents had me so early, like well in their 20s, right? Like when I was growing up, we had the luxury of having my grandparents being able to like take a lot of time with me, and my grandma didn't go to work or anything like that, didn't work, and so like I was raised a lot by them, like in those early ages or years of my life. And then for my grandma, man, I mean, sense of organization and like, just like cooking. I mean, I would cook with my grandma. So I love cooking now. And I think a big part of it is just because of those times that I spend with her, and manners and, all that good stuff.
I love that. Okay, so you've come to the United States, you're going to school, you're living life, doing the dance. Question for you, I want to learn about how you met your wife, right? So I'm gonna jump into
Oh,
this. Yeah, buddy.
no.
Yeah, buddy. Because here's the thing. I want to know.
Nobody's gonna like this answer.
Listen,
And
I'm just trying to figure out, do you
no,
have Riz where
no,
you're
I
like,
mean,
here's my shot, or is it more of like, hey, let's do this thing?
no, so how it works? So we met online, first of all, right? So like
Okay.
we kind of got connected online, and after a long pursuit of mine trying to get her out, which she wasn't caving in, finally one weekend that I was driving back from Charlotte here in Charleston, South Carolina, she like texted me out of the blue. It's like, hey, I'm in happy hour, and if you want to meet up, we could just hang out and stuff. Finally, right? And I was like, well, I'm like, so like I'm just trying to play it cool. It's like, well, I just drove back from Charlotte. I'm kind of in the morning. I was kind of tired, so I don't know if I'll be able to make it. I'd say. And she's like, come on, after all this, like asking me out, you're gonna say no the one time. So she guilt tripped me. It's like, you know what? I'll see you in 15 minutes. I'll be out there. And so, I went out to meet with her, and like we just kind of like we had a long, I mean, we're at a bar, right? It's like happy hour, and so we were just like having drinks and talking and getting to know each other and stuff. And it was like, I mean, it was like the entire afternoon pretty much, and we just like I just felt connected in a way of like give and take and like the sarcasm back and forth and stuff. Just like we hit it off, and so she did get a little tipsy, and so she was sent back home. I made sure she made it back home with her friend and stuff. And then, like after that, we just kind of like went out again. I was like, we need to figure out this girl, because that was good. And then like after that, we just kind of like started rolling, and so we went on dates and just did things and stuff. She's a pretty introverted person, but she definitely I don't know, like I guess like we hit it off pretty good. So we just doing things and just getting to know each other, and we have a huge love for pizza in common. So we use that as our superpower. We went out for pizza a lot.
I love this. So you guys met, I believe it's because I've stalked you on online. So it's 8 years you've known each other, 5 years you've been married, right?
Yeah,
Is sort of the
yeah,
idea of
yeah.
that.
We got together officially in like 2016. We dated for a year, and then I proposed the following year on 17. That math right? Yeah. And then on 18, like at the end of 18, we got like married in the court, and then on 2019 April, we got married, like in the actual ceremony on the beach and stuff, which was like one of the coolest things that I've done in my life after proposing to her in New York, which was also pretty cool. So
I love this.
she's definitely squeezed the best ideas out of my head to impress her. So,
Okay,
or try
question
at
for you
least.
is let's try, right? How does your wife compliment you, right? So whenever I hear people talking about their spouse, I want to find out like what are the things that you see in her that like make you a better man?
Oh, you're not gonna want to hear this, and neither will
Okay.
she. No, and by this I mean like I don't mean that she has brains, right? But I'm the brain emotionless, you know, executor. Like I just do shit and I don't think about it, right? And I don't know if I'm supposed to. Are you gonna believe that? And so, uh, so like she compliments me because she is more feelings oriented, right?
Hmm.
And so, I think like that's our balance. That's a constant struggle that I have with my son because I want to build him up like me, ruthless and freaking, like able to take anything in the world. And I feel like she pours a lot of emotion, but it's a nice balance for him, right? And so I think that that's the biggest compliment that she provides to me. She gives me a sense of like emotional intelligence that I I am still working to self-discover. Let's just put it that way.
I love this. Okay, so she's your yin to your yang in regards to the emotion side, which I love to hear, right?
Yep.
So here's what the next question I want to ask you is how does she challenge you? Right? Because for me, I go, that's a beautiful balance, but then how does she challenge you as well?
Uh, I think it's emotionally. That's the
Okay.
biggest challenge that she poses to me, honestly. Like I don't know. It's like I said, and I'm very analytical. I'm an engineer for crying out loud, right? And like my number one priority is to solve problems, right? Like I'm an engineer that wants to be an entrepreneur. My number one priority in life is to solve problems. So when she comes to me with just comments and she just wants to hear somebody to hear out, and I try to like open up the problem and dissect it and dissolve, like she'll put me in check pretty hard. It's like, dude, what are you doing? I don't need help. Like I just need you to hear me out, or like she'll push back on that from. So she challenged me to become more sensitive, right? And to like over the past 2 years since we have Noah, because that's become a lot more accentuated after Noah was born. um Over the last 3 years of his life and up to this point, like, I feel like I've been progressing in that sense, right? And so like I'm a lot more mindful. I still blurb stuff every once in a while, and I just can't control sometimes. But I still try to like be more intentional about what I say and how I say it, and just be put myself in her shoes and kind of like the ways that she. I'm not perfect. I'm not even close to it, but I feel a sense of improvement, and I hope she can one day attest to it to you.
I love this. Okay, so Noah is this amazing little human filled with energy and teaching you so many lessons.
Yes.
I love watching him on Instagram and just like watching him grow, and it's an amazing thing to see. My question for you would be this, right? So what has been the biggest lesson that you've learned from fatherhood, right? Like what or share just some that you've learned about becoming a father about yourself, right? As you as a man leading your family and caring for your wife and your kid, like what have you learned about from fatherhood?
Oh man, I think, so you you have to be really, really intentional with every single thing that you do. I mean, I think the biggest thing that I've gotten from fatherhood right now is like how huge of a role model I am to my son. And like, like he would literally emulate anything that I do. He's a goofball because I'm a goofball with him all the time, right? And so, you know, having that power over someone, right? To me, it puts it into such a big perspective because I try to use it as a way of not only remind me of all the personal development and growth that I want to do for myself, but just apply it like real time with him, right? And so I'll give you an example, like from this morning, like I was trying to get him changed, and he's like, I'm gonna put my underwear myself, right? So he's trying to like struggling to put his underwear. So I take it out of his hands, and then like, all right, Noah, here's how you do it. So I kind of like you bend down and you put one leg up and put your underwear. So like I literally like show him how to do that first part before he pulls it all up. And then like I give it back to him. Are you ready? He's like, yeah. So he starts to do it and he's struggling, right? So I figure that one out. But then like the next thing is like he just grabs his shirt and he's like, I'm gonna teach you how to put this shirt now because that's what I know how to do, right? It's just like you take the one hand and like put the hand first and the other. So like and to me that was like the biggest, like the craziest reminder, right? It's like, man, I really, really have to be on my best game every single second that I'm with this person next to me because he is absorbing my good behaviors, my bad behaviors, and obviously I'm trying to do my best to increase my good behaviors and use them as a justification to do it for myself too. So like now he loves smoothies with granola because I eat them, right? And so like he'll ask me for them, and like I try to eat more fruit so I can encourage him to eat more fruits, and like just things like that I'm trying to apply for myself. Being a father now, it's a lot. It's that much more important. Like before I didn't think too much about how I acted or whatever, and now it's just like I have a responsibility to just be on my best self and be very, very mindful of how I do everything and intentional. So
What are the fears that come along with stepping into this role of fatherhood, right? So what would be one of the fears that you're facing right now as a father?
So for me, I think the biggest fear is really trying, just I'm gonna make a very weird analogy here, right? But just like
Okay.
I don't even know if it's gonna make sense, but so it's just like leaving this world, right? I mean, obviously losing him to anything, it's just like tough, right? I mean, like I just see other parents and people that go through that, including friends of mine, right, or family members, and I just when I try to put my I can't even put myself into those positions. Like I just could not imagine it, right? That's I think like the biggest fear, number one, 100%. The second biggest fear is me leaving this earth too early for him to like be fully baked into the good that I want to put in the world, right? And so, like not being able to feel that he is he's ready to undertake anything, right? Which I know he's super capable of us of and probably discover himself. Because I'm sure that like a lot of that information is coming, hopefully genetically, from me. And it'll like unravel, in the future by the condition that he faces. I'm hoping. But that's I think fear number two, just not being able to, teach him the 12 lessons, right? And like, just being able to be there for him and if he needs me, right, and whatnot. I think that's really it. Every other thing, like illnesses or whatever, right, just because of my life and how I went through some stuff myself, like we can, as long as we're together, I'm pretty sure that we can get through it, and that's my hope.
I love it. You just mentioned the 12 lessons. And for the listeners, I want them to know that you wrote a book for your son and it's called Noah's Space Ark. And it has 12 lessons essentially that you want your son to learn, right? You want him to grow and you want him to understand and you feel that these are lessons that are going to help him grow into the man that is going to be successful and live an amazing life. And so I'll share a little bit in the description what those 12 lessons are. But in this discussion, what would be the top three that you're sort of diving deep into right now? Just you individually, and then I'll ask about your son.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think like right now we're in a stage where the main one for me is like the lesson of loving your family, right? For the first time in 25 years or 20, yeah, 99 to 24, it'll be 25 years. The first time in 25 years, right? Like I'm actually living with my parents in the same household. And so, like putting that family love into the whole picture, it's something that, obviously my wife and I, before they moved with us, like we still like trying to build that for him. But, like having my grandparents like add another layer of love, to him, it's just incredible, right? And like seeing him to be timid when they first move in with them to like now just like every morning we're going to breakfast like grandpa, grandma. It's like it just fills me with so much joy, and like it just really excites me because obviously I spent a lot of time away from them, 25 years. And so like as a son, I didn't necessarily live a lot of that stuff. But like now seeing it as a, as a the dad of their grandson, their son who has a kid, and just like experiencing the love that like they can give to him, it's just unreal. So love your family for sure. I think having fun along the way is something that like we live by in this house, right? Like we're always joking around. I try to make sure that he realizes that there's nothing that should make your life so serious that you can stop, like having fun or like just enjoying the little things, right? So we'll do voices. I'll chase him down the room, just making dinosaur roars. I'll put like paperbacks on my head. And I don't know if you see. No, those are on my cell phone. Those are not on Instagram yet. Um, paperback like paperback cutouts with holes like while he wears another mask, and we'll just do goofy stuff all day long and just like try to teach him that pretty big value, and then finally, I think that working hard is just kind of like the final foundation that I would like I'm working on. I'm as he continues to learn things, I'm trying to like bake it in there, and just like if I let him struggle, right? And like I'm not just gonna pick you out and like, oh, get me out of the crib. No, no, no. Come on, you've gone out of before. Do it yourself, right? Like I was telling you about the underwear today. It's like try to put it yourself, right? Like I'm not. I can dress you up in like 2 seconds, but we're gonna take 5, and you're gonna struggle through it, and I'm gonna guide you through it. So like I'm doing a lot of coaching. I'm doing just like small things, day-to-day things for him, or just normal things. And so I'm trying to build that into there, but just teach him that working hard, like it's kind of like the way to go. There's no easy way out of anything, right? I mean, there's smarter ways out to get through things, but not easier. Like it just takes time, right? And you just got to do it.
Absolutely. And so, okay, so your parents are living with you. And what I find interesting right now is you have this interesting opportunity to sort of be a son, but also be a father, but
I
also
know.
be a friend to your father. Or like, explain that dynamic to me of like, what does that look like? And then what lessons you're learning.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard. I mean, my dad's values are very, very ingrained in me, right? Like, I mean,
Mhm.
he was, it's like me, very persistent on, just saying the same thing, like, just kind of like repeating himself on like, do this, be the best as everything you do, try to be the best you can be. Whatever you want to do, be the best at it, right? Like absorb as much information and always be learning stuff. Like, so he taught me a lot of these values that I'm putting in the book. Like but for me right now, right, it's like as an adult, 43 to be in July, having my parents live in the house and trying to give me advice, right, is something that I'm struggling with, right? Because like I made it out this far. It's your time to like now give that same advice to my son, your grandson, right? And so we're still trying to. I mean, it's taking some time. They've only been here since November last year, so we're working through catching up the relationship, right? I mean, like not it's not like we have an issue or anything, right? Because we can still deep and talk and just get deep into stuff, but it's definitely that whole sense of like as a son, right? It's like okay, your role as a father is I know it's never gonna end, right? But like at the same time, it's like it has to shift a little bit. As a father of mine, now your role is more of like supporting me with my son, so you can provide, the knowledge that you once gave me. At least that's the way that I see it. And so he still doesn't get that. And he's getting better at it, right? And I think that like he realizes that like, his investment in knowledge on me, it's paid out to a point where he can just kind of like relax on my end, and then I'll work on my son, right? And so help me get the same like stuff built into him. So, but I mean, yeah, it's not a struggle, right? But it's just like one of those things where like he'll say stuff, and I'm like thinking to myself like, I know, Dad, you've said that a million times, and I have applied that, and I should have shown you that already, how I apply the knowledge or whatever, right? But so it's been a growth, but ultimately, I guess, I'll say that it's it's a great reminder, right? That like it's great to have him, right? Like, I mean, like a lot of people don't have him at the end of the day, right? And like, I grew up with my grandparents, and I know how much I regard that experience, right? And like, I love, because it's just different. Like, whatever your parents do for you, loving you, is not the same that that you'll get from your grandparents, right? It's just a completely different dynamic. And the fact, like, a lot of kids don't have that experience, that option. And like the fact that I'm just trying to like focus on that. It's like, I don't care how much frustration I might get. Like, at the end of the day, my son is getting this awesome experience, and that's all that matters, and that's all that's important to me. So
I
I don't
love
know if I
that.
answered the question, but I went down like so many tangents.
No, you did. You did. Okay, so here's what I want to ask about next. So you and I have talked a lot about systems to make sure that your life is running well, right? And so you have other individuals that are coming now into your family or into your home. And so you have your parents, you have you have your wife, you have your son, you have a future baby on the way as
That's
well.
right.
And so I want to find out from you, what kind of systems do you currently have set up to allow you to sort of operate at the level you need to make sure that you're loving your family well, you're showing up as the best person that you possibly can, you're focused on your work and being excellent at it. Like, go into detail in regards to what does that system look like for you currently?
Oh man, it's all about um, I wouldn't say time management as much as like organization, and really putting the start of my day and the end of my day into like a very, very strong routine, so that what happens in the middle of the day has a lot of flexibility for me to feel like I've accomplished, the steps that I need to on that day. So I wake up super early every day. My wife's a nurse, so sometimes she's got to be at the hospital at 5:45 or at the clinic, and then at 6:45. So I'm always kind of like shifting between 4:30 and 5 wake up time. And so, from that time until 7, I'm just like focused on myself and my routine, like do my workouts, do my, my journaling, do, all the things that I need to do to keep my brain fresh. I then like splash you know, a big cup of happiness in my morning by just waking up my son when he's in a good mood, and just getting him right to school, and just kind of like have that whole hour, until 8 that I drop him off at school, just kind of like focus with him and just like get him started and just like, goof around. And then do my work, which I kind of like same thing. I have a lot of productivity things that I do, managing my calendar for my meetings and just working sessions that I block into there throughout my work day in the corporate world. And then once I clock out, it's just like I'm off and I'm back to dad full time. Like I'm rarely, it's just like from 5 to 7:30, 8 o'clock that we put Noah down. It's just like family mode. I'm just there where, whatever the day may be. Some days he wants to be more with his mom. Some days he wants to be more with me. I'm trying to get him outdoors a lot. Like I said, my wife is more of an introverted, so like I really, I'll take him for walks in our, in our block or whatever, and just go explore and just look at random stuff in the neighborhood, and just trying to give him that sense and love for it. He loves the outdoors, seems like, but he definitely loves the couch too and watching TV, as most kids. But yeah, so and then like try to like keep that consistency of my sleeping time. And so like at nighttime is really like that wind down, period of like I might read some stuff before bed. Sometimes I fall prey of the cell phone scrolling, and then the next day I feel like crap. But just keeping that like I said, I think like the start of my day, my morning routine, my night routine, in sync and like really solidly, consistently done. I also two trackers with this background. I don't think you can see it too well, but let me see if I can. Oh man, there you go.
There it
That's
is.
the way to do it. So like it's just a tracker of all the stuff that I do, that I kind of like try to keep, somewhat of a track. And then I have a buddy of mine who actually made me suggested an approach that I implemented right away of like at the end of the day, just kind of like take a test of like how you went, and then just type in like, put it in a happy face if it was a good day, or a smiley or a sad face if it was a bad day, or just kind of like a flat, flat face if it's a flat day. So I've incorporated into, that, like, cause I like I said, I'm very good about like doing stuff, but reflection and like thinking and letting the emotions simmer to like create something or express something is where I struggle. And so that's helped me be a little bit more intentional and mindful about it. So yeah.
So
So
interesting. So if you start seeing a lot of sad faces or blank faces, what things do you do then to pivot, or how do you then adjust to get back to those smiley faces?
So this is a new thing that I've implemented. It's my second month, or like, I mean, I don't even, it's not even a month. Like I started like halfway through last month, and then it's, whatever now. So it's not been a full month, but I'm actually finding that I'm seeing a lot of happy faces, right? Which kind of like reinforces the thought that like I have a lot of blessings and a lot of great things going for me, even though I still complain about, the regular life issue sometimes. But it's again, it's just being mindful and present on those feelings, right? Because a lot of times, like you said, like when you look at, like, oh, you can, I don't know, like somebody cuts you off in traffic or whatever, and like I've learned to like I've learned to cut those bad emotions right off, the roots, and like not let them just kind of like carry over through the entire day, wherever it is. Like rarely I'm finding that anything is big enough for me to hold any negative emotion for longer than a couple of minutes
Mm.
after. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? I'm breathing. I'm alive. Why am I worried about this crap? It's not gonna matter in 2 days. In a day, it doesn't matter now, you know. And so I think that this helped reinforce. Obviously, it shows me too, like there was sometimes last month where I had like a little bit, a few sad faces, and it just made me think of like what happened and how I can, kind of like do to actually like manage the next day better. But a big thing for me is just like, I read these affirmations every morning from OJ Mandino's book Mission Success, and it's like the seeds of the seeds to succeed success, or I don't. I'm really bad at quoting stuff, but the essence of what the thing is, like every day is a refresh, right? Like, and what I did yesterday, it doesn't matter, it's gone. So like I just gotta focus on what happens today and what I can do to mend anything that I might have broken, before, right? Instead of focusing on dwelling into it, just like, okay, I got into a fight with my wife. What can I do today to turn that around so that I can have a great day with her today, right? And so being more present and intentional and mindful about that, I think is like what ultimately is helping me with.
Dude, you have an amazing ability to have sessions of introspection, which is huge, right? To be able to like talk to yourself and examine what was occurring, right? So I love the fact, because I think that ties back into your engineering brain, which basically goes, there was a problem, and now let me
Yeah.
break it down, and then let me see how I can fix it and move forward from there. So
Yeah.
that's a really amazing skill.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, and I won't say like I'm, like Socrates or anything like that, that I just sit and deep think all this stuff for hours at a time, right? But I think there's definitely, like in the morning, I've taken this like routine of like getting outside and sitting on the deck instead of like in my, inside in the couch, and like just being with nature and like letting those things come out while I journal in the morning, as opposed to just sitting on a table. And like that's as I affirm the positive thoughts that I want to have and all that stuff, it just like brings it back. And like again, it's not like super analytical per se, but it's just like the presence of not letting it sink in too deep so that I don't have to like
Yeah,
do too deep analysis,
no, that's good. All right, so let's dive a little into the feelings part. Your
Oh
favorite thing,
boy.
the thing you love, the emotions, all of that good stuff. Okay, I want you to think of a moment that brought you absolute joy where you were laughing so hard you were crying, right? Like, I want you to like find that moment. I want you to share one of those with us. It can be with your family, it can be with your dad, it can be your son, it could be with your wife. Like, when was the last moment you absolutely were just, this cracked me up and I'm enjoying life?
Well, so a crack up moment. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, I I think for me, I mean, when I got engaged to my wife, it was like highlight joyfulness of my life. We just like I just was in ecstasies, in a way. I was just like in heaven, right? Because I guess I'll disclose a little bit more of that whole moment, right? Like I I I had been like with another person for 5 years, and I never, I went through an iteration where like my friends got engaged, right? And I was at the party of engagement with this person, and I was just like envious of them. It's like, shit, I don't feel this for this woman. Like, and
Hmm.
like obviously things winded down and broke up. It's like everybody says, like, don't worry about it. You'll know when you find the right person. You'll feel to do all these things, right? And like, I always thought it's like, this is romance movie crap, right? Like, it's like that's kind of always. But then, like, when I met my wife, it all like actually happened to me. And so, like, for me to carry out this mission of like getting on one knee, share this thing, and she's saying yes, and being super surprised and super happy. It's just like it took us to the sky. And so, like, I was just like smiles the entire time as we were just walking back from Central Park, which is where we got engaged, down to the area where we stay in the hotel, and like hitting bars along the way, of course,
Of
to
course.
celebrate. And so, it's just like I think like that's been a super super happy moment in my life where I can. It's just like the joyfulness and the excitement of that moment really brought a lot of positive happiness emotions in me. Obviously, you know. Um, my son's birth was an incredible moment too, but I think that along with the joy came the fear that kind of neutralized that, right? Because it's like I'm so happy I'm a dad and you're here, but now it's like crap, I'm not prepared for any of this, I don't know what I'm doing, kind of thing. And so the joy, like it didn't show as much, right? Like you're just worried. So you're like, oh my God, I have this diamond with me and I don't know. It's like my precious, right? And so, I think that would be another pretty big highlight of my life, in that front. And I think like those are the two biggest ones that I recall, quite frankly. I mean,
Okay. And then what is a moment of just sadness and sorrow? And it doesn't have to be like just share of like a moment of like processing some hard and heavy feelings,
um,
and what that looked like for you.
yeah, that was is the death of my grandpa.
Mm,
Coincidentally, I think like I mean I think that's definitely been like the hardest. I was only 16, right? I think at the time, and like it's one of those things. Like he had cancer for a while, like brain cancer, and then like it metastasized into the lungs, or from the lungs into the brain. But then like he kind of went through this period where like he actually recovered from cancer, right? But then like he went back down for immune system, like capabilities to defend itself, and so like it passed away of something else, like pulmonary something. And so like we were all thinking that he was gonna make a come around turn, and then like all of a sudden he went back into the hospital, and like next thing I know, it's like my mom is like, we got to go to the hospital because your grandpa passed away. And it was just like, what? So we went in there, and just like that whole scene of like saying goodbye to him, and then just like through, you know, the whole like funeral and all that experience, and being that he was a famous person in Venezuela, like having all this turnout to his funeral, like all these people like loving on him and stuff. I just kind of like I was in shock for so long, and like I held straight up, like I just didn't show emotions. It's just like I couldn't process it until like I finally we went back to my grandma's house, and I remember, like it was yesterday, like I just like let it all out. I just couldn't believe like he was gone, because like we were pretty tight, and I guess, man, whew, you're like, I haven't thought about this crap in a long time, and you're just getting my stuff. Get down there. um, yeah, I just remember like, you know, just sitting there and just starting the ball, right? And everybody's like, it's gonna be okay, and I just like, out crying, super hard, and I was just like, I just couldn't believe it, right? And so that was pretty tough. And then yeah, I guess like that's been definitely one of the hardest for me, if not the hardest. My uncle passing away was pretty bad too. But I think like the fact that I hadn't been in Venezuela for that long when he passed away, like, all you're holding on to is a memory at that point, not necessarily like the relationship fully. And so that actually made me think about like, the fact that like, what if my parents pass away? And this is pretty heavy now, what I'm gonna get into, right? But like I thought about it and I was like, shit, am I not gonna feel like as much as an intense, because like I mean I was like really, really close to my uncle, right?
Mhm.
And like I loved him a lot, but like really the shock wasn't as intense as I thought it was gonna be. And as it was for my family that was there, right? And so it's like, is that gonna be the case for like me and everybody else in my family that's away from me now? And so I hope not, but I haven't faced, thank God, nothing yet anymore, and I'm good. So
All right. So we are on the topic of death, and I love this question. Um, I want you to think of your funeral. Everything's gone great. Your kids are grown, like family's grown. You were 90 years old. You lived a fulfilled life, and all this stuff is good. So you have your son and whoever else just getting up to share about who you were as a man. How would you want them to talk about you? Like what would make you feel as if you lived a fulfilled life when your kid gets up and says, "My dad was this."
oh man, you should have given me time to prepare some of these answers.
No.
Um, well, and the reason why I say that is because, like, as far as my introspective or like, just looking inside, like that's part of what I'm trying to like, like you set that goal for yourself. And like I've learned that you have to think backwards in that regard to build up to it, right? So for me, I mean, I think that it's just for one that he knows that I love them, right, and my family as much as my own life, right, and like to this day, I'll say like that I will sacrifice anything for my family. Like I'll just put it that way, right, and that's just a feeling that comes like in my heart and is deeply, deeply, rooted there.
Mhm.
Um, regardless of pain, regardless of anything. So I definitely want him to like say about that, right? Like that I was, I don't know what the word would be for that. Like that I was willing to sacrifice myself. Like, and then, so that's one thing, like just to, say that I love them so much and that I want to be, like that I was always there, for anything that they had, including my friends, right? Like I'm very, man, you're making me think about this. You said you were gonna
Mhm.
touch into my feelings. Are you gonna close out this thing? Um, and that I was, like I said, like that I was a hard worker, that I was a visionary in a way, from my family perspective, that I want to, always try to be positive, to look for the future and just figuring out a way to be better, not just for myself but for everybody around me, and trying to help everybody that I could along the way. I think that, to me, those are the guiding, I mean, those are really like the guiding principles of my life, right? Family is one of my heart, my core values, improvement, right, and efficiency, and I want it to be kind of like embedded into whatever they say or he says, right? But like, I mean, family is the engine and the fuel for me to move, right? Like, I don't know I'd be intrigued to see how it would unfold if I was just like no family guy, and just like for whatever circumstances I was just like alone in the world, right? um
Mm.
which I kind of was for a little bit, but obviously you have your family, right? And you have your things that motivate you from afar. But you know, yeah, I love family and friends, man. That's part of my life. That's a pretty heavy value for me.
So then family and friends are the biggest thing that you want to focus on. What defines success for you then in life? So let's say I'm not even going to go do 10 years from now. I'm going to do six months from now. based upon family and friends being the quintessential piece, what is a goal or something that you have looking forward to be able to get you to that point? What's this? Does that make sense?
Kind of. Can I be like in an interview and say, can you repeat the question again?
Absolutely. Let me break this down for you. Okay, so we basically said that is how you want to be defined, and that's how the people you love, you want them to speak about you. So what's one thing or two things that you can commit to over the next 6 months that would get you to that goal? Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold you accountable to those. So it can be, for me, it's like family is obviously a big one. So maybe it's like, hey, I want to like do this one intentional thing for them over the next month, or I want to get closer to them in this way, or what's one thing that you would be willing to commit to goal
Yeah.
wise over the next 6 months to get you there?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think for me, it continues to, it's investing my time in spending like time with my family, right? I mean, like in this immediate circle of like just my parents and my wife, right? Like just being intentional about scheduling activities that we can go experience stuff together as a family, right? So we went to the air show a couple of weeks ago, right here in Charleston, which is something that I had never experienced myself, even though I've been here for like 9 years. So like I was like, all right, well, we're all going. We're not gonna go on Saturday because my dad works. We're gonna go on Sunday so we can all go and experience it as a family, right? And so I think like being more intentional and mindful about how to use like activities to create that bond and reestablish that bond. Like we're going to the pool like almost every weekend now, so like so my son can be in the pool and they can experience him like swimming around and stuff. So I think that that's definitely one thing that I'm working on, and trying to figure out again how to reconnect those emotions that have been kind of like unplugged for 20 years with my parents, over 20. Because I mean, it's not the same to like have like conversations with your parents every day or every so many days on the phone, and that's it, right? Versus like having, man, if they listen to this, having them like having them live, like live here, and then like just have regular living situation, things. Right? It's like, oh my, I left the door open, and my mom left the fridge open for too long, or my dad, like, I don't know, like left crumbs on the counter, right? Like, just it's dumb stuff, but like, it's just stuff that you don't think about because like you never thought about it before in your relationship. Like, I never thought about it in the relationship with my parents because like I was experiencing those issues, right? And they're not huge issues, but they're like things. I have my ways, they have their ways, and now we're just trying to like figure out how to like mesh together as best we can, right?
Yeah.
And so like I'm letting go of certain things, just in order to like move forward. And like I don't care. Like I said, the other day, just hearing my son say, "Grandpa, Grandma, good morning," right? It's like every morning or whatever. It's just like whatever. I don't care. I'll clean the counter 17 times. I'll sweep the floor a million times. And my parents are very clean, by the way. I'll just say that for the record. It's just that I became a little,
OCD.
cra- well,
Yeah.
yeah, crazy. I've always been. I come from an OCD family. I think like the levels of cleanliness in my house back in the day were intense. Not so
Oh,
much
that's
anymore,
funny.
but yeah.
That's so
So
funny. Okay, want to ask you, how did you get the name the Million Friends Guy on Instagram? Like, what made you choose that specific name, and how are you implementing that today?
uh, so it's kind of a combination of my own journey and something that a friend of mine said to to me and the group of people that were talking, right? So for me, friends, like I said, it's like it's the offset of my family, right? Like I left my family back in Venezuela. I've lived for 24 years now by myself. Friends have replaced my family, and so whoever I let in, like from my end, it's like as long as you don't take advantage of it, right? Or make cross me in the wrong way. Like it doesn't matter if we don't see each other for 3 years. When I see you again, I'm gonna treat you like we just freaking left, right? Like that's just my offering as a friend. And so because I've been by myself, I've had to grow a lot of different circles of friends, and they've always played a pretty big part of my life, right? Like I have friends to go out to the beach, right? Some other friends to go out to the lake, some other friends to like go do whatever, right? You guys to do crazy stuff in the all day running community, right? Um, but so like that's one piece of it, right? Just having a lot of friends, right? And then when my friend kind of like explained to me his view of a song in Latin America that I believe that the singer is Roberto Carlos, but I won't quote me on it. I have to do the research. But he was basically saying like, you know, he also appreciates having like knowing a lot of people and, you know, having a big network of friends, right? And so he said like the way that I explained is like, just imagine if you had a million friends, right? And you got a problem, you can ask your friends for solutions and you get a million solutions to choose from, right? And then like if you're broke, you know, and everybody pitch in with $1, you become a millionaire instant because like, you have friends, you know, that can help you out, right? And so that really stuck to me. And so as I was like trying to define my, you know, Instagram ways of, you know, promoting, you know, my personal brand or whatever, presenting myself to the world, I thought that was something that was very fitting for me. So I just kind of like came up with that like million, you know, the million friends guy. You know, I thought like the 1,000 friends guy is kind of like the little, and then the 100,000 million, you know, friends guys is complicated. The million friends guys is kind of epic. So
I love that.
that makes
I love
sense.
it. It does. No, it does make sense. And what people need to understand while you're listening is so we've gotten to meet each other through all day running a company and we've ran some crazy races. And the thing that I've always learned or just observed about you is that whenever I look at you, you're surrounded by people, right? And that's because you draw people in. You get into a conversation, you learn about them, you figure out how to make connections. So for me, I love that name and I associate that name with you because when I see you, you're bringing people together. So that's a really cool thing that I love about that. So I'm going to jump into, based upon that, I'm going to jump into the next section of this conversation, which is essentially the topic of grit. Because I've watched you push through some crazy races. I've watched you overcome some injuries to then still try to go run races. I'm like, this man's ankle is busted and he's still out there getting miles and all this other stuff. So I guess my question to you would be like, how do you define grit? Like, and then where did you get it from? Right. And sort of how is it in, like showing up today in your life? Let's go there.
All right. So, I mean, this is just by divine planning, you know, quite frankly. So I was born with a heart condition growing up, right? And ever since I recall, right, like I don't know how old I was, right? But like the doctors were always being like, you know, because it wasn't, you know, life threatening, but it could threaten my life, you know, growing up. It's some manageable, but it could also get worse over time, right? Like they have all these different circumstances. So ever since like I can recall, you know, like going to the doctor and then being like, you know, you should, you know, lay off sports, lay off physical activities, just like stay away, you know, just, you know, be your traditional kind of like quiet kid, right? Or whatever, not physical kid. And so somehow I always had in my head, it's like, I'm gonna die doing what I love. Like I'm not, and this is like these are thoughts like as I was a kid. I remember my mom always said, like, don't, you know, don't do so much running or whatever, don't play too much or whatever, don't get too tired, don't, you know, bust you know yourself too much. And I was like, Mom, let me be like I'm gonna do it, you know, like you're not gonna be able to prevent it. So I think that like growing up with a heart condition that like pushed me backwards, but I still managed to like keep pushing hard and hard and finding my limits. And I mean, granted, I could have literally died, you know, playing in the park one day, right? Because I would remember like growing up, I would have instances where like, you know, I run to a point where like I would start seeing like flashlights, you know, in my eyes. And so like I would have to like just kind of like sit down and just like let my breath catch up. Because my condition basically was that my heart was pumping blood, oxygenated blood out to my system, but because the valve was messed up, a lot of that, like a percentage of that blood would come back. So like really my endurance
Mm,
was cut down, right?
hmm
A percentage. And so, you know, like once I start like exert a lot of, you know, athletic pressure on myself, like, you know, like I just aimed to pass out, I guess. Like, you know, my body could just pass out and never recover from it, I suppose. So I think like growing up in that environment, like really, you know, like made me gritty in a way, right? It's like, you know, well, I know that I'm not gonna run as fast as those guys, but I'm gonna freaking run anyways, you know, and like until I pass out, you know. And so, you know, I kept pushing myself as I grew up. I built more confidence because I learned to like know my boundaries and I got more solidity on my boundaries and stuff. And you know, and then like once I got my heart condition, fixed, you know, and when I had my open heart surgery, I mean, that was just like day and night, right? I was like, oh man, this is what I really can do so like I was kind of like, you know, I think it was all generated through my heart condition, I guess, bottom line. And you know, like once I saw the other side of what I could actually do, it's like there's no reason to stop pushing, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that that's taught me, you know, and then obviously, you know, the fact that, you know, I left home, you know, in my, you know, 18, and then just kind of like being, you know, mending for myself here in the States. And, you know, obviously there's my family support from afar, but, you know, just kind of like going through stuff. It's like, okay, well, this happened. Now, what do I do? I need to fix it and figure it out. And okay. And then I just kind of like evolve into this, like, you know, growth, you know, like, greedy person. Like I'm just learning to do new things and just kind of like expanding my tool belt and just like I'm not looking back and I'm never going back. I'm just like I'm just gonna keep pushing forward as hard as I can be set back, but I'm gonna keep going forward. You know what I mean? So I've been really good about adopting that whole ant philosophy that Jim Rohn talks about, which is like when you won't stop an ant, right? No matter what you put on its path, if it's going in the line, following all the ants, it's gonna crawl over it, it's gonna dig under it, it's gonna do whatever it does unless you kill it. That thing is gonna keep moving forward, and I feel like that really, you know, resonates with me and my ways of being.
That's so cool. I'm just blessed because I'm your friend, so I get to see it and experience it and watch it and learn more, like how all of this has come through your life and created the man that I get to call a friend, and get to just watch in your development as a father and a husband and all this really cool things. And then hopefully I get to see you run 100 miles with me in December. I'm just pressuring you because we're on the podcast and it's being said. You know, you have an opportunity to come join me on some fun and just push through with some grit. Just putting it out there for
Just putting it out there for everybody, for the universe.
All right, so let's do this. What is one message you would want to give your son? So let's say 25 years from now, he gets to listen to this podcast. What is something, words from wisdom from his dad? What would you want him to know?
I mean, I would pass on the message that my dad gave me, really. And that is just like whatever you choose to be, you know, whether that's to be you know, a person that sweeps the street, you know, or an executive at a corporation or an entrepreneur, you know, somewhere in the world, like just make sure that you're the best that you can be, and if possible, the best at it out of everybody. Just give it your all. Don't half-ass stuff. And I think that that's a lesson and the message that like it'll just carry you in places, right? Like it applies for everything. If you want to be a friend, don't be a half-ass friend. Be a full friend and be the best friend you can be. If you're gonna be a husband, be the best husband you can be. If you're gonna be a father, be the best father you can be. So that's it. Boom.
I love it.
Noah,
okay.
Noah, 2045. We're in 2024, buddy. It's still gonna be online.
Yep, you better listen to this. All right, so just share with everyone where they can go get a copy of the book.
So in my Instagram, the Million Friends Guy, I have a link attached to it that can take you either to the shop and Shopify that I set up where you can order it, or you can go to the book Instagram, which is also linked through my personal Million Friends Guy, and that's the same thing. It's just another link over there. So either way, it's linked into my Instagram, and feel free to reach out if you want to, and I can definitely guide you through it. And thank you for it as well, for the support.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today, and I hope you have an amazing day. Thanks again. Goodbye.
You too. Love you, Rudy.
Me too.